phones, 3 people.
Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Well, that was a way to introduce me. Welcome to tonight's share. Thank you, Michael and Ivor, as always, for being here in person. Thank you to Mochi and to Malcolm for being there on Zoom. To all those on Facebook Live, thank you for joining. And for those of you on TorahAnytime.com, thank you for joining us on TorahAnytime.com. Please check out many other shurim that you can find on TorahAnytime.com, the greatest portal for Torah out there online nowadays. Okay. Very interesting things that I'd like to share with you tonight. So a whole bunch of different things. The first one I found was interesting because I think it's one of these, I guess, sociological discussions within the Parasha. Yeah, okay, so let's see how that goes. Page 674. We're talking about the different things about the Kohanim, and we speak about the Kohanim in certain ways that they are holier, they cannot make themselves impure, and they cannot marry certain individuals. So we know Kohanim, you have a separate section for them in the Beis Olam, in the Ohel, which is not connected to the rest of the Ohel, and they kind of come out into the actual Beis Olam in order to bury the people, unless it's one of the 7 close relatives, which is father, mother, brother, sister, son, daughter, and spouse. In this instance, really wife, because for the woman it doesn't apply. And you have also certain halachas about whom they're allowed to marry. Are they allowed to marry somebody? They're not allowed to marry somebody who's divorced. What about a woman who is widowed? So Kohen can't marry a widowed woman either. And there are also certain halachas that apply to this woman. If you have a young girl, a Bas Kohen, the daughter of a Kohen, who is Mizana, who has an intimate relationship with somebody that is forbidden. So there the Torah says the following. Parak Chaf Aleph Pasuk Tes, chapter 21, verse 9. Uvas ish Kohen, the daughter of a man of a Kohen, kiseicha liznos, if she will go ahead and desecrate herself through adultery, es avia mechalela, she desecrates her father with it, bo'esh tisarif, in the fire she shall be burnt. That is the halacha of adultery. Now again, we know that adultery is punishable by death for all women and men, not just for this daughter of the Kohen, but yet the punishment for the daughter of the Kohen is more stringent in that she gets sreifa, which is a higher level misa rather than chenek, which most of the others get. And the question is, why do we pull up the daughter over here specifically and not the son? Why are we making such a big fuss about the daughter, what the daughter did? Why aren't we making a fuss about the guy who had the adultery with her? Because it takes 2 to tango, right? It's not only her on her own. There must have been somebody else who committed adultery with her. Well, he's just as bad as she is. There's no better or worse. And there seems to be something else that's going on over here, is that we are making a point and saying, Es aviyah mechaleles. She is actually desecrating her father's name. So it's interesting that we mentioned this idea of the desecration of the father's name. And how does it work? How do we understand this desecration of the father's name? What does that mean? And how come that doesn't apply to boys? Why don't boys desecrate the father's name when they commit adultery? Is it only girls who desecrate the father's name when they commit adultery? But if a boy were to commit adultery, then it's okay? What is this? Doesn't sound fair, right? Seems to be a dual standard over here. So therefore, the Emes Yaakov, Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, tells a very interesting story. He tells one story first, which is a story from the Gemara in Sukkah, which is a very famous story in the Gemara in Sukkah, because some of the things in each Gemara are famous because they're the final Gemara in the Masechta. And so anytime you go to a Siyum, and the Siyum is on Masechta Sukkah, you'll hear that Gemara again. Like the Gemara with Rabbi Akiva and Makkas, where they all cried and Rabbi Akiva laughed, and they said to him, well, why are you laughing? And he says, why are you crying? And they have this conversation about, we're crying because we see the desecration and desolation of the Beis HaMikdash. How could we not cry? And he says, well, that's why I'm laughing, because if I see that the first part of this prophecy was kept, so the second part of the prophecy also will be kept. And the second part of the prophecy is not only that Jerusalem will be desolate, but Jerusalem will be rebuilt. Okay, so that's a famous story. I'm sure many of you have heard this story before, as far as the Siyam Amaseches Makos goes. So the Siyam Maseches Sukkah also has a very famous story, and the story there deals with a lady by the name of Miriam Bas Bilga. Miriam, the daughter of the family of Bilga. You've learned it already, right? Because you've done with Rebelli.
The one that's short on my Sunday night shiur I go to.
Oh, all right. But did you not do with Rebelli already on the Daf Yomi? Yeah, you've done already, Ivan. That's ages. That's ancient Gemara. That's already like half a year ago. Yeah, okay, but I'm sure you've done. I figured you've done the story. Hi, Elliot. Nice to see you. Yeah. So the story over there is as follows: that they took the ring of the tribe of the family of Bilga and they screwed it down. Meaning to say, in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, they had rings in the ground, and what you do is you'd lie down the cow, you'd put the ring over its neck to keep it straight, and then they would shech the cow. So they took the ring of the family of Bilga and they screwed it into the ground, and it was not usable anymore. What they'd done is they screwed it down so you couldn't lift it with the cow's neck and then close it down. And the Gemara asks, why did they do that? Why would they do that to the family of Bilga? And the Gemara tells a story of Miriam Bas Bilga. And this is at the time of Hellenism. So there were many, many people that had given up on the Jewish roots and instead embraced the Greek traditions. And what happened is you had Miriam Bas Bilga. Miriam was the daughter of this family of Bilga who had become Hellenized, and she'd become irreligious. And she ran over to the Beis Hamikdash. She either stomped on it or kicked it. And she said, Lucas, Lucas, you wolf, how long do you eat up the money of Klal Yisrael? Look what you're doing. You keep on taking all of these karbanos from Klal Yisrael, and a carbon isn't a cheap thing. A cow's not cheap, neither is a sheep. Birds are cheaper, but cows and sheep aren't exactly cheap animals. And you keep on taking all of those, and you take all their money, but when they need your help, you're not there to help them. What's with you? And that's what she said about the Beis Hamikdash, this is what she said in the Beis Hamikdash about the Mizbech, about the altar. And Chazal saw this as such a negative thing that they wanted to punish the family of Bilga, and this is the punishment for the family of Bilga. And the Gemara there asked the question, he says, well, wait a second. Why is it that the family of Bilga has to suffer for the words of one young woman who spoke out of turn? We're not condoning what she said, but why are we condemning the entire family to punishment when in reality it's just one woman who went off the derech? And the answer the Gemara actually gives, not what you said, oh, that's interesting what you're saying. The Gemara says, if you hear a child saying certain things, it's either the father or the mother that have said it, and that's where they picked it up. I remember at the time, my sister said some word. I think my sister went to camp and she picked up a word over there and it wasn't exactly a nice word. And she used the word. And I remember my mother saying, people are going to say, this is what I say at home. This is how I talk. Because people aren't going to say, oh, she went to camp and she must have picked it up over there. Well, this is how the Eismerks talk at home. When my mother said, I can't have that. It's not right. Okay. And therefore we say this young girl, I mean, I've heard it many times. When you hear kids who are like 15 start talking about the chazan or about the rabbi or about the warden or about, the politics in shul, what do you think this 15-year-old kid has any idea about politics in shul, what the president should or shouldn't be doing? Where did he pick that up? From the father. If these kids are starting to give stock tips or telling you about the economy or telling you about the politics and why they think Jeremy Corbyn is wrong and why they think this one's, where they get it? Their parents. That's where they heard it. Their parents keep on saying it, and the kids pick it up from their parents, and they parrot what their parents say. And therefore, the entire family of Bilga was punished because Miriam Bas Bilga was only repeating what she heard at home. And if that's how the family of Bilga is treating or is talking about the karbanos, the offerings, then they deserve to be punished for that. So we see from this Gemara in Sukkah that the behavior of a child is to be attributed to their parents. However, says Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, we point out over here specifically at the girl. And the reason for that is because we have to understand sociologically what used to go on in the olden days. Did girls actually have formal schooling? No. Did girls go out and get educated? No. Did they even have jobs? Oftentimes not. They worked at home. They did things for the house, right? Now you might say, okay, they were so behind, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not talking now about whether that was right or wrong. I'm telling you what used to happen then at the time. At the time, women had a different status in society. They didn't do what they do now. Not because they weren't intelligent enough, not because nobody believed that they were any good. This is just how it was. So the way a woman was at the time, if you were to look at a young woman of 15 or 18 and you were trying to figure out the behavior of this woman and everything that she stands for and everything she represents, where will that come from? Entirely at home. Because that's where she lived. That's where everything came from. Whereas young men, their brother's been here, there, and everywhere. So the brother's been here, there, and everywhere, and he comes back and he starts behaving badly. When this child behaves badly, this brother behaves badly, are we able to point a finger at the parents and say, aha, you've brought him up badly? Not necessarily. Because kids who are out there are out there. They pick up things all over the place. Right? There's certain things that my kids do that I'm not necessarily proud of. They picked up from their friends. Whether it's certain things they say, whether it's vaping, it's not the kind of thing that I'm so happy about, but that's what they do, and that's how they behave, and that's how their friends behave, and they picked it up. And there's very little I can do about some of these things. And I remember somebody saying to me just recently, "What, your kids vape?" I'm like, "Yeah." "You want them to vape?" I said, "No." "So how'd you allow it?" I said, "My kid leaves the house on Motzei Shabbos and comes back home on Friday afternoon. What choice do I have in the matter?" Well, I can't send a guardian with him. And if they cost £100, I'd say, look, I'm not giving you £100 for it. But he gets pocket money. And you can buy one for £3-4. So go stop him. So it's a battle I can't win. That's the end of the battle. And you know what? Baruch Hashem, they're not on drugs. Baruch Hashem, they don't get drunk on alcohol. Yes, I'm not excited about faith, but you know what? As things go, I'm willing to look away on that. There's certain things I wouldn't be willing to look away on. But on that, I'm willing to look away on. But I know that I don't really have a say in the matter. As much as I'd like to have a say in the matter, they're not home most of the time. So people were to point to me and say, you do this. You allow your children to do certain things. To which I would say, not my choice. So, well, why don't you stop it? How am I supposed to stop it? They don't live at home, basically. How do you stop it? And I had this conversation with, with some of my classes I was speaking to recently. And I said to them, when you reach a certain age, your parents will get to the point where they cannot discipline you anymore. When you get married, there's certain parents that are very funny. Their children get married and they still start trying to tell their kids what they're supposed to do. Look, this child is married now. They live on their own. Why do they go to sleep so late? Why do they go to sleep so late? Somebody said to my a mother of a Kala called my wife. I spoke to my wife. She says, they're like going to sleep at 3-4 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, yeah, they do whatever they want to. They're married now. Back off. What do you think they are? 3, 5? This is a woman who's married. She's got a husband. They're living in their own home. They can go to sleep whenever they want to. Now, do I recommend going to sleep at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning? No, I don't think it's a good idea either. But you as the parent have to realize, let go. You don't have a choice. It's done. It's finished. She's married. Or he's married. It's over. More or less. You can try very, very hard. I just had this conversation with Rabbi Ginsbury last night, and he said to me, one of the hardest things is seeing some of the things that your children do, wanting to give them advice and tell them they're doing it wrong, and having to bite your tongue and not do it anyway. They don't want to hear from you. If they want your advice, they'll ask you. You could try maybe softly to tell them, and if you get lucky, maybe they'll listen, and probably they won't. And this is just the way it is. That's life. So the son is the son showing by his adultery that this is something he picked up in his parents' household? Not at all. Could have picked up anywhere because he's out there. He's gone to yeshiva. He's working. He has friends. He's out in the world, in wild world, big wide world. What do you want from him? Or what do you want from the parents? And so therefore we speak specifically over here, the Bas Ish Kohen. The Kohen's at a higher level. And if she's doing something wrong, why is she doing something wrong? We're blaming the father because she lived in your house and really had nowhere else to go. So she picked this up at your house. Whereas, and this is what it's interesting that Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky says is about the boys, but I would even go as far as to extend this nowadays to the girls. Again, we don't have the death penalty anyway. But I would say that nowadays, when you look at children and their behavior, even if you look at girls and their behavior, can we point a finger at the parents and say, aha, badly brought up on your behalf? It's much harder these days, especially when you take one of these little things, these little gadgets. These little gadgets that you hold in your hand have opened up the entire world to you. And the entire world is now in the palm of your hand. The greatest schmutz in the world, the pornography, the foul language, the terrible ideologies, the leftist secular way of everything. It's all here. Now, you might ask the parent, why are you dumb enough to give your child one of these things unfiltered? That's a different discussion. Any parent of a teenager that gives their child an unfiltered smartphone, what are they thinking? You've given them a live gun, a loaded gun. Oftentimes they give them enough data to surf forever and then give them the Wi-Fi password still for the house that they can surf even more. What do you want from these kids? What do you think they're going to do? Only watched Disney cartoons? And by the way, Disney's gone much, much worse also. They've joined the leftist woke groups that are starting to push these kind of ideologies as well. Nothing is safe anymore. So now they're going to be having a character on one of the new Disney films that's going to live an alternative lifestyle. Same gender relationships. That's where Disney's gone.
It's just another kind of normal.
Pardon? It's another kind of normal. But our children, when I grew up, we watched Disney. It was normal, right? And my kids already didn't watch Disney so much because we didn't show it to them. But the next generation are already going to watch a Disney that's going to teach them things about the world that you and I might not want to teach our children, but this is the new normal. And you give it to a child, you've handed them the entire world in their hand. So maybe you are at fault. But women go out nowadays much, much more than they used to. Girls get educations and they get jobs and they have social lives and they go out. I'm not saying this is a bad thing. I'm not here to denigrate that. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying, the same responsibility that the parents had in those days, it's hard to give them that same responsibility. In the same way, Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky says, we'll give the parents a dispensation for the boys because the boys don't live at home. Nowadays, girls don't really live at home like that either. And therefore, the same dispensation probably needs to even extend to young women. And it is what it is. But life changes. Societies change. And with the change in society, the idea behind this must change also. And so that if we point at parents and say, you've done this, it's your fault, sometimes it's their fault. Many, many, many times, it's got nothing to do with them. Okay, that's the first thing that I wanted to speak about. Right. Now, we move on to something else. I saw tonight in the Maya Mesa Sheva, again, Rav Shimon Schwab, whose Divrei Torah I always find very, very uplifting and very inspirational. So we're going to move on to page 680 in your Art School Chumashim, and this is Parak Chav Beis Pasuk Chavav, chapter 22, verse 26. And we have over here a very interesting set of psukim that go together. Hashem speaks to Moshe saying, if whether you have an ox or a sheep or a goat that's born, it needs to be 7 days with its mother, and only when Yom HaShmin Mahala from the 8th day onwards, Hashem. First point is that you cannot bring an offering under 7 days old. It needs to be under 8 days old. It needs to go through 7 days. Only on day 8 can you bring it as a carbon. Next thing, Sharoseh, if you have an ox or a sheep, also as it and its child cannot be brought on 1 day. That's the next halacha. Next halacha, the chis is when you bring a carbon toda, a thanksgiving offering to Hashem, you have to give it with a good heart, with goodwill. And on that day you must eat it. You can't leave anything over it. And next, right? And then look at verse 31. Sorry. Ushmat mitzvah, keep my mitzvahs, and do them. Ani Hashem, I'm God. Do not desecrate my holy name. Venigdashti, rather I shall become sanctified amongst the Jewish people. Ani Hashem HaKadishchem. I'm the one Hashem that made you holy. I'm the one who takes you out of his time. That for you, be for you a God. Ani Hashem, I am Hashem. This will sound very familiar because just 3 weeks ago we read this on Pesach. This is one of the lanings on the second day Pesach. We lane this both days Sukkot, second day Shavuos, and second day Pesach. So we lane this 4 times for Yom Tov. And number one, the question is, why do we lane this on Yom Tov? What does this have to do with Yom Tov? Number two, says Rav Shimon Schwab, there seems to be a string of psukim with a whole bunch of different things that seem to have nothing to do with each other. You need to wait 8 days for a carbon to be ready. You cannot check the mother and the son together. You have to bring a carbon toda through will. You eat it at the right time. Keep my mitzvahs. Don't do chilul Hashem, and be willing to give up your life for Hashem. So how does this all go together? How do we take all of these disparate parts and make one thought out of this? And Rav Shimon Schwab says a beautiful idea that I'd like to share with you. And that's the following. In order for us to appreciate certain things, we have to realize and understand what the attitude towards that thing is so that we can appreciate it when we have an aberration. Okay? So if I were to say to you, Mr. Reichman gave $1 million to tzedakah. The famous Mr. Reichman in America, in Toronto, very, very famous billionaire who was one of the greatest philanthropists out there. If I were to say to you that that man gave $1 million to tzedakah, what would you say? Yeah. Not only easy for him, but it was normal. Yeah. He gave those amounts to tzedakah all the time. But if I were to tell you the same thing about one of the greatest misers that you could find, I'm not going to mention any names, but let's say you knew a terrible miser, and that individual went and gave £1 million to tzedakah, what would you say? Wow. Yeah. Wow. That's a real, and that really sort of like, wow, what happened here? Because it's so different. It's such a change. It's so different from the ordinary. When I know what the ordinary is, and then I look at the change, I can get the understanding of what the change, the meaning in the change from looking at what the ordinary is. The guy who's very, very generous and gives a generous check to charity, that's normal. The guy who is not generous and gives a generous check to charity, everyone looks at the check and goes, did I read that right? Or did he get one zero too many on that check by mistake? 2 zeros too many, however you want to do. Yeah. And that happens. So here the question is as follows. What Rav Schwab wants to say is the following. The Torah is asking us to be willing to give up our lives for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The question is, how do we as Jews view life? The more important, or the more importance we put on life, the greater the thought of giving up your life. And the less value we have for life, the less it really means when we ask you to give up your life for God. Because you give up that for 1,000,001 other things. Okay? That's the idea that Rav Schwab says over here. And therefore, he says, first, I want to set up the idea over here, before we get to the idea of Kiddush Shem Shamayim, the fact that you should sanctify your life for God, be willing to die for God's holy name. We have to first of all tell you, what is the Jewish relationship with life? How do we as Jews view life? So, for example, one of the things that's going on right now in America, big argument, the pro-choice versus pro-life. Yeah, Roe v. Wade, have you heard that now? So the Supreme Court wants to overturn Roe v. Wade. Yes. No, so what's going to happen is, I think, what the media is saying is actually wrong, because overturning Roe v. Wade, all it means is now that on a state level, each state gets to vote. It doesn't make abortion totally illegal in all the states. Everybody's going to put it to their own people. So in very conservative states, like I guess Texas or Mississippi, they'll be prohibited. In very liberal states like California or New York, you got nothing to worry about. Have as many abortions as you want to. There'll be tons of doctors lining up to do it. So when you speak about something like that, So we as Jews, we have always been pro-life. Okay? That we say a potential life, even that's very, very important. Can't just kill a potential life because it's inconvenient, right? Now, for those who say, well, there are unwanted pregnancy due to rape or assault or whatever else it is, less than 1% of all abortions in the United States are due to rape and incest. That means over 99% of abortions are just women who decided that they don't care. This child's going to ruin my life. He's going to ruin my chances. I'm not in the mood for having a child right now. So let's just kill it. That's, that is the norm. That's what's going on out there.
All these women or families are crying to have children. They're struggling.
Correct. And they can. There are tons of people that are going through infertility in a terrible, terrible way. And they would wish they'd take this child in a heartbeat. If this child was born, there are people lining up to take this child. Newborns, people are lining up to take newborn children. Unfortunately, when it comes to children getting 5, 7, 9 years old, it's already you're taking on a child with so much baggage, it's a lot more difficult for people to take it on. But babies, newborn babies, I find lots of people take on a newborn baby. Yeah, absolutely. And so again, we as Jews have always been pro-life. Even from that stage, even from the earliest stages on, from the fact that this is just a fetus inside the stomach of the mother, you're not allowed to kill it. And we see it as murder. And very much so moving on into regular life. We've always put a great emphasis on life. So when you put such a great emphasis on life, and God says to you, but nevertheless, in certain instances, you have to be willing to give up your life, that's really the ultimate sacrifice. But if you have people that are willing to jump out of planes and do all sorts of extreme sports and all sorts of ridiculous things, like you read sometimes people like this guy was walking on a tightrope between 2 skyscrapers and he fell off and he died. Like, I find it hard to have Rahmanas for the guy. If you're dumb enough to walk across between 2 skyscrapers without having any protective anything, no protective netting or anything, and you fly off, I don't think you deserve to die, but you're showing a total disregard to your life. Who does that? I'm a daredevil. Okay, so daredevils, if they die, everybody goes, well, okay. He did one too many times. He tried to stay there, and you see sometimes they have all these things. I've seen people show me, like, in these talent shows, people do all these crazy, ridiculous things, literally risking their lives. Why would you risk your life just to do a stunt on TV? What kind of view of life do you have? What does life mean to you? And we say the other way around. You have somebody over here, so he works backwards. He starts with a carbon toda. You know what the carbon toda is for? You had an individual that was ill. You had an individual that was in prison. You had an individual that was crossing the sea. He was crossing a desert, she. And they got to the other side. And they were able to survive a potentially fatal situation. What do they need to do? You got to be thankful, so much so you got to bring a carbon to Hashem. You let me live slightly longer than I thought I would. I had to go through a dangerous situation. You saved me. You deserve thanks. That's the way we look at life, even for a little bit of extra life. God say thank you. Moving back. We appreciate life so much that we're not going to take a child, even a cow or an ox or a sheep or a goat. As soon as it's born, slit the neck, needs to live for a certain amount of time. That's how much we respect life. And then he says, with that respect of life in mind, we then say, but that same God that has asked me to do all of those things tells me as well, in the right situation, under the correct circumstances, you would have to give up your life. And that's that's saying something. Because to give up your life in an instance for somebody to say I have to give up your life, where They are of the utmost, they have the utmost respect for life, not only of human beings, but even of animals. That's a really big thing to say. That's very, very different. And therefore, that's what we're saying over here. And then we say, that's why God took us out of Mitzrayim. God took us out of Mitzrayim. Why? Because he wanted us to live our lives and a life of purpose. That's what we took you out of Mitzrayim for. And that's how we finish it off. And that's why we read about this every single Yom Tov. You read about it because God is saying to you, life is precious. And I've took you out of Egypt because I want you to live life in a certain way. And I'm expecting certain things from you. And I hope that you will treat your life with the respect it deserves rather than stepping all over it. And so therefore we read this every Yom Tov, even though we don't need it for the amount of psukim that it adds to the laning. We could manage the psukim even without it. And we mention every Yom Tov that it's Zeichel Yitzias Mitzrayim, says Rav Schwab. Because Yitzias Mitzrayim teaches us. God says, I appreciate life. I took you out for a purpose. I want you to do with your life. And so we read that, we say Zeichel Yitzias Mitzrayim on every Yom Tov. Shmini Atzeres, Hoshana, what's Shmini Atzeres, Rosh Hashanah, what's Zeichel Yitzias Mitzrayim? Because it's about life, about the value of life, about the way we live life. That's what it's all about. And so therefore, that's the idea over here that Rav Schwab shares with us. I had two other ideas, but we've run out of time. So I'd like to thank you very much. Again, thank you, Michael and Ivor, for joining me in person. Thank you to the three of you who joined me on Zoom, for those who joined us on Facebook Live, and for those who are on Twitter anytime and you'd like to get in touch, it's davideisenberg@gmail.com. Would love to get an email from any of you out there. And thank you very much and have a very nice week.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you.